Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your busy schedules to listen to this great discussion today. Just want to make sure everyone's logged on, can hear me well. Post in the chat if you're unable to hear me, or just raise your hand or something. So today's discussion, is going to be regarding the new Office of Policing Reform and Accountability. And then, of course, at the end of the program, for those looking for CLE credit, we will give you the course number. We'll put it in the chat, and we'll say it aloud as well. So we have Jill Hawkins. She's the owner of Law Office of Jillian Hawkins, PLLC. And she's a criminal defense attorney in Houston. I apologize. Someone just mentioned they cannot hear me. Okay, now they can hear us. Okay, sorry about that. So Jillian Hawkins, criminal defense lawyer here in Houston. Prior to practicing criminal defense, she was an assistant district attorney with the Harris County District Attorney's Office, as well as a staff attorney for the State Council for Offenders in Huntsville. She's a Baton Rouge native, so a Louisiana girl, and she received her law degree from the prestigious Howard University in Washington, D.C. So everyone, allow me to introduce our moderator and co-panelist for this event, Ms. Jillian Hawkins.
Hi, everyone. I will introduce who our panelists today, Ms. Crystal Okorafor. Ms. Okorafor is the appointed Deputy Inspector General of Houston's brand new Office of Policing Reform and Accountability. We thought that this panel would be a great idea because while the office being created is exciting news, it's great for the community to know as well how we can get involved in helping that office, because policing accountability really kind of starts on the streets. So it's great to know what the office is responsible for, how our citizens can get involved, and what they're working on since they've been created. So I'm excited to have a discussion with Crystal today about what they've been up to the last several months. They've been really busy, even though they've been around for a very short period of time. So it's a lot more than that can be packed into an hour, but I think Crystal has definitely hit the ground running in her new position. And we just want to have a discussion about everything they're doing over there. Crystal?
Thank you, Jill, for the wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Alvin and Stephany and the entire Houston Young Lawyers Association for having me here to have this conversation with you guys. I'm really excited about the opportunity. This office is so new. Like Jill said, it was created just in April of this year, and I started in May. And so we have really hit the ground running with what we're trying to accomplish here. The office was charged with, I guess we started the office because of so many things that have been happening around the country. And we are excited to bring a lot of reform issues here to Houston.
So Crystal, what type of experience are you bringing into your position, into your leadership position in this new office?
Absolutely. So I have been, prior to joining the City of Houston in the Office of Policing Reform and Accountability, I came from the University of Texas at Austin. Go Longhorns, it's almost football season. And then I went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law. There I joined the District Attorney's Office, and I was a prosecutor there for 8 years. I've tried over 50 jury trials from start to finish. I have a lot of experience in leadership and things like that in the police and the criminal justice system. And so for me, it's about taking my experience of the criminal justice world and seeing how we can start with not just changing the criminal justice system, but changing how the police interactions have come and how the interactions are happening in different communities. Because I think, as we've all seen in the past year and a half, it's really come to the light that it's been happening for far longer.
Right. And so in your experience as an assistant district attorney, you had the opportunity to work with police officers on a regular basis, right?
Right.
So you kind of have front-hand experience on some of the issues that our law enforcement agency have from both sides, some of the community issues, and then some of the issues within law enforcement.
Absolutely. And I think, as a prior prosecutor yourself, Jill, you and I have watched so much body cam, and as a defense attorney, you see this body cam and it's a lot of times it's different than what you're seeing in an offense report, right? You see an offense report, it says, oh, we stopped them for traffic and then we found marijuana and that was it, right? But there's so many other things that are taking place on these body worn cameras, and that's not necessarily being handled, oh, you might get a dismissal because of something that a prosecutor or a defense attorney brought to the attention of the prosecutor because of what an officer's interactions might have been. But that's not solving the case. That's not fixing the root of the problem. That's just getting this person who might not have had a criminal record or might have one, you're getting a dismissal on that case. But the problem itself, you have to fix at the Houston Police Department. And by no means is anyone trying to say that all officers are bad or anything like that. I think that we have a wonderful police department, but like in anything, there have to be checks and balances. And I think that my experience of seeing some of the horrible things at the district attorney's office that I saw, just even the way that people spoke to people and their interactions, it brings a lot of firsthand knowledge to my role here at the Office of Policing Reform and Accountability. And it also helps with the police department because they give me, they have a certain level of respect for me because of my years at the district attorney's office. So I'm not a complete outsider coming in, although I am completely independent from the police department,
Right. And I can remember, as you said, working at the DA's office, a lot of the issues we'd see in the body worn cameras on that end would result in a dismissal, but that same officer is back out in the community making that same mistake or just being rude or mean or unnecessarily mean or forceful. And nothing happens from there. Sure, the person's case is dismissed, but what about the next person and the one after that? So speaking of body worn cameras, that's a hot topic these days because all of the cases we see in the news, the vast majority of them now these days have body worn cameras. Sometimes we're lucky to have one. Sometimes it's policy. So in Houston, what are the current policies as of maybe 2019, 2020, and what are the changes that are coming or that have been implemented recently in regard to body worn cameras?
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I think body worn cameras is a crucial issue. And so in the beginning, it was rare that officers had body worn cameras. Now, almost every officer in the police department and all of the agencies in Houston, they all have body worn cameras now. And then as of recently, the Mayor Turner announced, in light of, the Harding Street case and so many other, with George Floyd and so many others, where the body worn camera is showing a completely different story than what is being initially portrayed. There is now a policy in place where anytime there is a officer involved shooting, the body worn camera is being released to the public within 30 days. That is one of the fastest releases that we have throughout the country. And it doesn't matter if there's going to be charges or not from the Harris County District Attorney's Office. From the date of the incident until 30 days, that body worn camera footage will be released. I mean, it's not going to be released in its entirety, but because of, there's other things that they can't just show everything, but the actual incident will be released within 30 days of the incident taking place to the general public. And I think that is so important with rebuilding trust and transparency, because there's so many things like, well, what happened? And, there's still so many cases of what happened that we still have never seen the body worn camera, and we might never will. This policy is for moving forward. So any kind of officer involved shooting, there will be a release of the body worn camera.
Wow, that's great. So what other policies since the office has been implemented? I know it's only been a few months, but I hear that there are a lot of proposals that are pending. Can you talk to us about maybe some of the more, I don't want to say more interesting ones, but hot button issues that are pending or being considered?
Absolutely. So Mayor Turner, in light of George Floyd, he convened the mayor's task force on policing reform and accountability. That was chaired by Mr. Larry Payne, and he is an activist in the community. Sorry, guys, my light went out. So they had a chair. They convened about 48, a little less than 50 individuals from around the community from different walks of life. There was people that were advocates for change. There's people, faith leaders. There were police officers. It was just a group of people that they dug into all the policies and procedures of the police department. They looked at trends around the country and all of the things that could have been done, should have been done, and how we can be better. And they came up with 104 recommendations that they thought should be implemented to make the Houston Police Department and Houston a better city, a better department, and just kind of keep us at the forefront of change. And so since taking office, we have tried, since I've been appointed to this position, I've been trying to really make sure that we get these measures taken care of. The first, one of the bigger ones was the body-worn camera issues. Another one is the Independent Police Oversight Board. It is a board of civilians. It's about 21 people. There's a chair. His name is Stephen Ives, and he is the CEO for the YMCA. And then there's 20 just regular everyday citizens on there, like yourself or anyone else. There's a couple defense attorneys on there. And they review any of the IAD cases for investigations for serious bodily injury, officer-involved shootings, any in-custody death, or use of force allegations. And so they look and they see what took place there, and how they can proceed forward. If they think that the investigation was complete and they agree with the punishment, or if they think that the investigation, they disagree and they think that other things need to take place. And so they are underneath the Office of Policing Reform and Accountability, and I oversee them. One of the other big changes is we've released the Police Transparency Hub dashboard. The dashboard gives a lot of information on it from the website. You're able to file a complaint on there. Prior to the creation of the Office of Policing Reform and Accountability, you had to go if you had a bad experience with the police department, you had to go to the police department to file a complaint. Not everybody wants to go see the person that made them mad to go file a complaint. And so now you're able to go on the website and you can file a complaint, or you can come into my office and you can file a complaint with my staff or myself. And then also on the website is the dashboards. And thank you, Jill. Jill just shared the teamwork here. She just shared the website for the dashboard there. You can go on that website and you can see the site and release for officers for Houston. It all goes back to, it tells you at the very top on where it starts the data. It's updated on the second day of every month. You can also see traffic stops by race and gender, use of force allegations, disciplinary action of the officers, and then also the diversity of the police department.
That's amazing. I can't recall a time where looking into some police stats, especially police department statistics, has been easier than this website. I probably, as a defense attorney, get asked a million times a month, this officer pulled me over and did this or that, and no charges were filed against the person, but someone should know that this officer did this. What do I do? What do I do? And it used to be a pretty tedious process. People cool off and they get over it and they just don't feel like filing a formal complaint, or they feel like nothing will happen. What's the benefit of, filing a complaint through this website against an HPD officer? Or benefit, and by benefit, I don't mean, what is the effect of it?
Right. And so when you file a complaint through the website, you can file it in 5 different languages. You can do it in English, Spanish, Arabic, Mandarin, and Vietnamese. The benefit is that you're getting to a person, right? Once it's filed, you'll hear from somebody within my office within 3 business days to let you know that we've received it. We'll take additional information from you and we'll walk you through the entire process. I know that sometimes it's like something bad happened, you're really upset in the moment, and then you don't want to do something about it. One, you can do something about it 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So you don't have to wait to go to a police station. You can get right on your computer, log in, do it then. And it might just, you might think, oh, well, this is really bad, but it just happened and I pulled down. But like Jill and I talked about earlier with the body worn cameras, a lot of times it's not just this one-off. There's a lot more times where people are doing the same thing over and over again, and no one knows about it because no one's standing up. And so if you have something where you're like, you know what, I didn't really like that, I would encourage everyone to err on the side of caution and file a complaint. It's not costing you any money. It's just a little bit of time to fill out the website. But you don't know what you could be stopping from the next person from happening, because the next person might not stand up, or the next person might do something, or you might be the first person to tell us and we look into it and then we see it's a pattern of behavior. And I can't, we can't find out these patterns without people in the community coming out and really talking to us about it. So I encourage everyone on this call and tell you people in your community and things like that, like if you have, and even if you have a great experience, please encourage you to file a complaint then too. And I can tell that, inform the officers like, hey, people think you're doing a great job, but we can't change things if we don't know them.
Right. You mentioned earlier the Independent Police Oversight Board. Was that something that existed before your office was created, or is it new?
It's existed for about 30 years now. It just didn't have a lot of structure behind it. And now it's been revamped so that they are able to report directly to me. And because of my position, I can report and handle things. It was all just volunteer. So now, since I'm a full-time employee of the city of Houston, I'm able to handle things and talk to Chief Benner or some of the other commanders and chiefs about whatever issues we're seeing and policy changes that we're looking to do.
And would you happen to know how they decide what matters go before the board, the oversight board, or is it everything involving the areas you mentioned earlier?
Right. So right now, the way it works, and this is part of the revamping, is that I get every officer complaint that is received into the Houston Police Department by the IAD department. I get a list of those every week. I go through them with the chair, and he and I look into those and we decide which ones, based on if it's serious bodily injury, officer involved death, or in custody death, officer involved shooting, or use of force allegations, or something that we think kind of falls into that and we want to look at more closely. We look at those cases and we mark them, and I let the ID office know at HPD that, hey, these are the cases that the Independent Police Oversight Board wants to follow. And then we go from there.
So I don't know exactly how many practicing attorneys we have watching, or practicing attorneys who do criminal defense specifically, but I do want to ask you, Crystal, and we didn't discuss this yesterday, so sorry if this is a curveball, but I personally am interested in knowing whether or not today, now that this office exists, if we're interested in getting some sort of background information about a specific officer. Does this office get involved with that? Have you guys made that easier for us as defense attorneys to get access to that information, or is it still the same process?
Currently, it's still the same process. You have to go through the police department to get it. That is something that we're working on, is trying to figure out the best way to release the information but also protecting, officers who might be accused of something, but it's not founded, but you might still want to know. And so there's a lot of issues there with just kind of how we release it. But we are looking into a way to release it. Currently, you can go onto the website that you put in the chat and you can see disciplinary action for officers, but it's not going to list their last names. It's going to be like, some ABCD 125. But it will show all the discipline for that particular officer, but it's not going to show their names.
Okay, it's good to know. I had a question right at the top of my head and it just left me. Let's open it up at the moment if anyone has any questions about what we've talked about thus far. Not sure how to switch. Oh, they do have access to be able to ask questions. If anyone has any questions right now that they would like for Crystal to answer, now would be a good time to enter them into the chat.
And I think I can share the screen while we're waiting, or while people are putting things in the chat. I can go over, show you guys a little bit about the website. Pull this up. Nope, it's disabled. Can't share. But on the website, you're able to manipulate a lot of things on there. You can go, for example, on the cite and release or traffic stops, for example. You're able to look and see how many traffic stops took place based on the officer, or based on like what the violation was. So say it was for a moving violation, you can click on the moving violation and you can see the race of the people that were stopped. You can see if they were arrested, what happened, were they given a ticket, were they given a warning, all of those things. And it's very interactive, so you're able to change things and things like that.
I remember my question. What's the makeup of your office? If someone were to deal with you guys, are they dealing with a bunch of lawyers, or lawyers and staff, or former police officers, or who are we dealing with in your office?
Right, it's a combination of lawyers and staff. Well, lawyer and then it's staff. So I am the only lawyer here. And one other thing that the office is able to do is we're able to do independent investigations separate from IAD. And that's something new as one of the task force recommendations, is that if we have, for example, something as egregious as a George Floyd situation, and we, we are concerned about the ability of someone to, are we hiring? I just hired, I'm sorry. We are concerned about the ability of the police department to investigate. I'm able to do an independent investigation along with IAD in regards to the incident. And I think it's really important that we know that it's not just officers looking at it, it's civilians who, no skin in the game and able to make sure that the right things are happening.
Good to know. So as you guys propose new policies, what's kind of the process with that? Like if you get a heads up that there's a particular issue amongst our police department, and you guys agree and you recommend a certain policy, is it a lot of red tape to go through to get that policy heard, or are there hearings, or how does that process go?
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of depends. A lot of things, like some of the policy recommendations are legislative issues, so that we're not able to change. One of the big ones is that when you file a complaint, it's the timeline for it is 180 days from the date of the incident. So say somebody waits 120 days to tell someone about, something horrible that happened to them. There's only 60 days to investigate and discipline that officer, or you can't do anything about it. And that 180 days is set by the statute in the legislature. And so we can't do anything to change that. And so it's very important that, we work on doing something to change that law, but it really prohibitive right now because your timeline, your basis to do something is really limited to that 6 months. So when we're trying to do policy changes to change that, then it's a lot more red tape. But then if there's something as simple as, changing, disciplinary action for not turning on your body worn camera, that's something where, okay, I bring my staff and we look into it and we say, well, we're seeing this many cases with it. This is how other people, there's some, we research and we kind of draw up a proposal on how we think it should go and everything like that. And then we talk amongst ourselves, and then we present it and we figure out the best way, because at the end of the day, Chief Fenner and everyone in his command staff is really trying to bring about a lot of changes. And so there's not a lot of pushback or red tape there. It's just a matter of, I am not a police officer, so I don't know sometimes like, hey, I think this is a really great idea. And then they tell you, you know what, you can't do this because of X, Y, Z, you know what I mean? Because I don't go tell the doctor how to do my surgery, but you're like, I'd like to have it this way. And so it's kind of a collaborative effort.
You mentioned police complaints, and it brought to mind a question that I think a lot of people don't know the answer to. What information do people need before they are able to file a complaint? Sometimes they don't get the badge number or their name. Are they out of luck at that point, or?
No, absolutely not. If you can tell us like a location, a date and time and things like that, what took place, we're able to pinpoint kind of where an officer was based on different, whether a patrol car, their body worn cameras, things like that, checking them in for calls of service and things like that. So we can kind of pinpoint it without having, you might not know the officer's name, badge number, the car they were in, a general description of the officer. And also because of the body worn cameras that 90% of the officers are wearing now, you're able to, we can kind of, okay, we know that the incident took place at this location and we're able to track different things that way.
Or maybe your own license plate information to see?
Yeah, absolutely. If there was especially like if there was a traffic incident or something like that, you're like, hey, I was at the corner of, Franklin and San Jacinto or something. And then you're like on noon on August 26th. That is sufficient. We'll do everything we can to kind of narrow it down.
Okay. See, I think Alucci has asked, has your office examined the work being done in Chicago, and are you implementing similar measures?
Absolutely. I've spoken to Chicago, I've spoken to Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, LA, Seattle, because although this office is new in Houston, it's not new around the country. And Chicago has an amazing office, but they have a much bigger budget. And they're able to do a lot more. And so some of the things we're doing similar, but they have, they're just set up differently. Our office is set up more similar to the LA department of the Inspector General. And so they are doing, they do have a civilian review board similar to ours, and they do real-time investigations into cases. So they're able to access their systems at the police department and review them. But I definitely think it's really important to talk to people around the country to kind of see how they're doing things, what's working, what's not. And so I personally try to meet with somebody that does this job every week, at least somebody new from around the country, to kind of pick their brain and kind of have that collaborative effort. And then there's an organization called the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, and NACOL, and it's really great with providing resources and talking to people and kind of getting additional information on how to do
it. So we've touched a lot on police accountability. I kind of want to shift a bit to something a little more reform related, and particularly concerning our youth. I'm not sure how involved your office is about just more proactive measures with law enforcement, but does HPD or your office have any initiatives concerning trust between the police and our young kids? Because we have our teenagers growing up in an age where they are seeing George Floyd and all the other headlines, and they're so young that they believe I can imagine that there's a much greater sense of mistrust with them, because it's kind of maybe even their first impression of police officers. Are you guys doing any youth outreach to establish more trust?
Absolutely. So I am in the community as much as possible with COVID, trying to reach out to people and talk. And we have regular communication with the community liaison for the police department, just on working with these issues, because I think it's so important as we provide changes and show different things that we're reaching out to the community to let them know. I think the youth is super important. We're working, HPD has a couple of different organizations through grants that they've done to allow officers to have, it's like a camp for kids that they work with officers and things like that. They have a basketball program and outreach group that they're working with. And then there's some other grants they're applying for to really reach out and be back in the community. It's just as they were ramping back up to start doing these, the numbers have now gone up. And so it's really hard right now to really make that work, but everyone is definitely trying. And we all know that I think the youth is the most important group to facilitate change. So that you can rebuild that trust, not only within the community, but also have a better understanding. And one of the things I think is also really important I'd like to highlight is that the police department has started a, sorry, am I live? Okay. They have a new class that Chief Fenner has started, and it's all of the officers are going to a class about the racial history of the police department. and how different, and there's also classes about diversity and learning how different groups handle different things. And so it's not that, and for instance, not all African Americans distrust the police, but this is why there might be distrust in the police department. And so when you go into that environment, it doesn't mean that you need to be aggressive. And this is how you might approach it. And so there's a lot of push there to learn and be a part of different groups and racial groups so that you can really understand them before you go out into the environment and you approach someone completely wrong.
What you said reminded me of a study that I saw. I think a lot of us have seen it at this point now, especially in the last year. The one in California where they review body cam videos and they just listen to the audio. They don't listen to the video, and they notice how differently the officers speak with certain people.
Right.
Has something like that been used to your knowledge within
Not necessarily that, but one of the things that my office is doing, we do random body worn camera audits to look into that. But that is part of the diversity training that they're ramping up at the police department, is to try and make sure that everyone is being treated equally. And I think that has really come to the forefront over the past couple of years, that you can't. And that's one of the goals of my office, really, is to just make sure I can't stop bad people from joining the police department. I can't prevent it necessarily from happening. But I think one of the biggest goals is just to make sure that whatever I can do to make sure that whether you are white, Black, brown, whatever, you are treated the same when you have an interaction with the police. And if you're not, that particular officer is held accountable. And accountability is really important because I think that there's a lot of changes that need to happen in the criminal justice system. And it's not just with like punishments and things like that, but even just in how the interactions with officers take place. Because I think that if we started here, we work on changes with the, bond reform and all these other issues at the criminal justice system, but if you're still getting more and more minorities arrested and having bad experiences, I think you can't change everything. So you have to kind of hit all different avenues there.
Right. So we have a good question from Jason Oliver. Since your work involves police complaints, how will your office increase transparency around the police union contract, which governs much of that process?
Right. So the meet and confer agreement is the contract, I assume you're speaking of, that kind of details, the union represents the police department in their negotiations with the city. And so their agreement is up. And so there will be a new negotiation. And then when they do those negotiations, we're able to try and implement some of the changes through the negotiations with the police department in the meet and confer agreement. But so far, things have been really great. I've met with the union about things that when we've had conversations, everyone seems to be working towards the same goal of just kind of making a better system.
And are those agreements made available to the public, or is there transparency in that area?
Absolutely. The current meet and confer agreement that is being used right now is on the website in which you listed. You can also find the executive order that created my office, the executive order for the Independent Police Oversight Board. You can find the website that gets you to my office with all of my contact information and everything like that.
So when this office was created, do we see this as being something that is limited in time, or is there like a potential end date? Maybe one day, 10 years from now, we say, oh, we're accountable and we reform, so goodbye oversight.
No, I don't think it's an end date. I think as long as to me, it's just like a checks and balance system. And as long as there are police officers, there has to be a civilian oversight over it to make sure that we're just kind of functioning properly. And then I think that things are ever evolving. The only thing constant to me is change. And so with that, you have to change and you have to adapt to new systems. Before body-worn cameras weren't a thing, social media wasn't a thing where you're finding out about, cameras and officers and things like that. And, as the world changes, I think everyone has to kind of change with it, because even just, we're all youngish from our generations growing up to our parents, and you just see the evolution of the culture and the environment of the country. And so as that changes, then we have to make sure that we're keeping up with the times.
Yeah, good plan. We have a follow-up from Jason. Are you able to discuss what you guys are seeking to implement in the new union contract? I can generally there's, I can send it, I can put it in the chat. Also, the task force recommendations. So some of those recommendations are what we're trying to change just in general. But we are definitely looking to, right now, we're not in the middle of negotiations. We're hoping to start negotiating soonish, maybe, but we'll see. So how do you guys plan to kind of track your effectiveness, like how your office is doing, maybe on a yearly or bi-yearly basis? Some of these changes are short-term, some are long-term. Do you guys have a system in place that's going to assess how effective you guys are being?
Right. And so part of what I've been doing when I've spoken to the other offices around the country is kind of figure out how they've been tracking it, because it's such a broad term, and the goals of the office are really about, kind of changing and culture, but it's really kind of not something very hard statistical. But I plan to put out a kind of an annual report of what the office has done, what we've been trying to do, and what our goals are for the upcoming year. Also, as we grow and are able to, I would like to also start putting out probably like a quarterly report of kind of what took place that year, where you can reach us, what events we did, and things like that, just so that as we get the word out, we're able to tell people more and more about what's going on. So definitely want to kind of submit things like that, and that'll be on the website for the office. Whatever.
So we have some more interest in the police union contracts. Is discipline a part of those negotiations with the police union?
Some of it is, yes. It like the tiers and things like that, the levels, but some of it is not. Like part of one of the things that is the promotion process, right? So the promotion process is part of the meet and confer agreement. And so any changes to the promotion process has to go through that agreement. The disciplinary action, yes, some of it is just the tiers and the levels of classification for types of discipline and where they fall is part of the meet and confer agreement.
Okay. So Crystal, you and I spoke about this yesterday, actually. So right now we have your office that's able to do independent investigation. We have the Independent Police Oversight Board that's able to do their investigation. I am familiar with, as a defense attorney, a section in the DA's office that's also able to do an investigation of their own. Can you kind of explain, as a former DA, are you familiar with that area of investigation and what their responsibility is at the DA's office when they investigate particular incidents?
Right. And so my office and the Independent Police Oversight Board, we're looking into the discipline for the officer, whether they should be fired or, drop down from a lieutenant to a sergeant, or if they should get days off, or whatever the case may be. When it gets to the district attorney's office and their civil rights division, they're looking into criminal charges, whether someone should be, have a criminal charge take place. Typically the IAD and investigation at HPD and the investigation through my office is taking place prior to that. Sometimes it can be happening at the same time, but typically the IAD HPD investigation is taking place first as far as the discipline and everything like that. But sometimes it is happening simultaneously. But that's the big difference, is where we're looking at the discipline for the individual officer, and they're looking into reference to the criminal charges.
So, and Richard kind of hit on that. He sent me a question briefly, and he also hit on something else that made me think about in my days at the office and as a defense attorney now. We talked about civilians and what they can do when things happen on the street to keep officers accountable. Like we said, so many people don't do anything. We have people who are arrested as a result, and we go to court, we get the body cams, and we as the defense attorneys, our clients, and the prosecutors see something that is potentially misconduct on those body cams. At that point, usually us defense attorneys, we want a dismissal, and we get it, and then usually nothing else happens from there. Do you think that the DA's office or the individual prosecutors at the DA's office should be responsible for taking it to the next level, maybe contacting your office and saying, hey, you guys take a look at this body camera, this officer's out of line? Should there be some policies in place to make them, communicate with you guys in instances like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely in a perfect world, it'd be great. I definitely think that at a minimum, they should be reaching out to their civil rights division at the district attorney's office when they see something like that. But I think it's just, from my time at the district attorney's office, I felt like each court was its own little country. Every judge is different, every prosecutor is different. If you came into my court, you might get a different kind of prosecutor sentence, offer, all of those things. And follow-up is just not, it just depends on the person. So I definitely think that, I mean, as a prosecutor, I think you probably have a duty to report injustice and things like that, I would say, but I don't think there's anything we can really do to force that. But I do think that, I've reached out to the civil rights division at the district attorney's office and let them know what I'm doing and things like that.
So after, 50 or so jury trials, all this time on the front lines of criminal justice, what made you want to, step out of the ring and give up all that fun?
It's so much fun. To me, I think what probably motivated me the most, I have 2 boys. And what I have seen over the past few years and things, racism isn't new for any of us. It's not something new that like, oh my God, what happened? This is all new in 2020. No, this isn't a new thing. It's just everyone had to sit down last year because of COVID and you were stuck at home. And because you were stuck at home, you had to see what so many people have been dealing with for years. And for me, what I saw when dealing with that was I thought about my 2 boys and I think about what kind of world I wanted them to grow up in and how I wanted their futures to be. And I wanted to make sure that as my boys grew up, I could tell them I did everything I could to make the world better for them. And I got to a point where I didn't think I was doing the most I could for the city at this pivotal time at the district attorney's office anymore. And so when this opportunity presented itself, it was one of those things where like, how could you say no? How can you say that there's problems and you want to do something better? And then here it is, hey, here you go, try and fix the world, at least try, and you say no. And so for me, I am very motivated by my 2 boys who I love dearly and my husband. And, I know that as they grow older right now, they're toddlers. As they grow older, I want to make sure that they are given the best chance that I can.
Right. Agreed. A good reason. Some questions. Okay, so we do have a good question from Brenda. Crystal, can you see it?
Yeah. Yeah, so the board is they are taking applications. They are on a rolling basis right now. So you can stay on and their term expires every 2 years. There's, I guess, actually every year there's a term expiring. If you go on the City of Houston Boards and Commissions page, you can see file an application with the for the Independent Police Oversight Board. We currently, I think, are about to be full because we just took on, I think it's like they're working on bringing on additional people. But I think that you might be able to still submit an application, and you can submit an application and then you just go into the queue for when a position becomes available, and then we will go from there. And if you're interested or want to know more about it, kind of talk about the duties, the time commitments and things like that, you can always reach out to myself and I will talk to you about that. But we're always looking for people from diverse backgrounds and things like that. We have defense attorneys, we have faith leaders, we have non-attorneys, we have some engineers, we have some retirees. We try to really make sure that the makeup of the Civilian Oversight Board is similar to the makeup of the city, because everyone brings in different outreach and different backgrounds.
Okay. And I'm sorry to everyone, I thought that the question was visible to everyone. I just realized it's not. So just to clarify, Brenda asked regarding the Oversight Board, is it a board with rolling terms that's always accepting applications? And so as Crystal indicated, that if you are interested in applying to be on the board, that's what she just discussed. And like you said, it's 21 civilians and one chair.
Right.
Curiosity, are there limitations for those who can be on the board? For example, convicted felons can't be on the board, or people you have to have zero criminal history to be on the board.
Right. There is a limitation as far as no criminal history, only because of the fact that you're looking at CJIS material and things like that, and you're looking at personal information of officers and criminal histories of whoever might be involved in a particular case. And so because of those background checks, you'd have to have no criminal history. However, if you have something that you were exonerated or expunged or things like that, that's a difference. So that is the caveat.
Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we're caught up on questions.
Jason asked, what are the key performance indicators for? Oh yeah, never mind. We answered that one, I think. Sorry.
So I just quickly, we had one more, I'm sorry, regarding, let's see, are there any red flags or major areas of concern in HPD activities that you've seen that you guys feel should be prioritized at this moment regarding public safety?
Not right now. I think that, every movement has a time. And I think right now is the time for reform issues and policing reform and criminal justice reform and all of these things. And I think that we could not be under better leadership with Mayor Turner and Chief Fenner at this time at the helm to really bring about those changes, because both of them are so committed to the city of Houston and wanting to do really good work. It's not about I'm an officer or I'm the mayor or any of those things. They're really dedicated to making change and making the city better. There's no egos in the conversation. It's just hey, let's get this done any way we can. I really want to make change. And I think there's a sense of urgency behind all of us right now, because there's so much momentum and so much power in the movement, and you don't want to lose it. And so I think everyone's just really motivated to push and really get things done.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Crystal. I'm really excited about this office. It's mostly attorneys or potential attorneys that are on this panel. And it's really us that are on the front lines of most of this if we're practicing criminal law. And it's exciting to have an office with a face, a person that we can actually contact when we have these recurring issues with our cases. Our clients, so many of our clients, this is my first time going through all this, but for me, I've seen it 50 million times, and it's a problem. And until your office, it's hard to make that problem known, other than to the DA's office, and that doesn't go anywhere. So this office is a great thing for our city, and they couldn't have picked a better leader. So I'm glad you're there. I'm glad you're here today, and I'm glad we could shine some light on some of your initiatives. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. This was great. I really appreciate it. You know, I heart you. I just put my email address in the chat. If you guys need anything, if you would like me to talk to you, or if you want our group or anything like that, or if you want to get more information, anything like that, please reach out to me. And then I am here, and I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, Jill and Crystal, both. We really appreciate you all giving your input, especially on your office, Crystal. So we really appreciate it. I feel more educated on the subject matter as well, and I feel better knowing that things are being done. Because like Jill mentioned in the beginning, there's good and bad officers, so we got to keep everyone accountable, you know. So that's a great thing. For all those looking for a CLE course number, I put it in the chat. But if you also need it, I'll dictate it right now. It's 174-129-320. Again, it's 174-129-320. And again, I put it in the chat. Thank you all for your time and efforts for joining us today and participating in everything. We really appreciate it. And we hope you'll have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care, everyone.